Okay, so my presentation is can it run coreboot? Checking your AMD platform for platform secure boot. Now, Piotr has already introduced me, but I'll introduce myself again. I'm Michał Kopeć. I'm a firmware engineer working primarily with coreboot and EDK2. I've been at VMware for over 3 years now, and I generally like all things open source. What's on the agenda? We will talk about the prerequisites of even considering running coreboot on a new platform. We'll be talking about what AMD does to prevent us from doing that, so platform secure boot. How can you check if you have it? I'll also do a small live demo, and I will discuss some future plans. And at the end, we will have some slot for discussion. Now, there's basically two most important things when considering porting a new platform to coreboot. You have to check if the silicon is even supported in the first place. Typically, in coreboot, if your platform is relatively new, as in AMD Ryzen or Skylake or newer, you would check in coreboot/SOC directory. And the other big thing is whether or not you have some sort of root of trust that is fused to keys that are not yours. So if you can run any BIOS coming from somewhere else than from your board vendor. So on x86 you have Intel Boot Guard, as we know, and on AMD you have Platform Secure Boot, or also sometimes called hardware validated boot. And you can also have an external root of trust, like a BMC, like ASPID has a BMC that does that, I think. And yeah, so step one is, thanks to Google, very often already handled for us. So Google has many vendors, including Intel and AMD for the Chromebooks. So, and modern mobile, at least mobile, modern platforms from Intel and AMD are supported way ahead of freeze. So you can see some changes coming in for Intel Panther Lake, for example, on coreboot Garage. Now, step two is usually more tricky, and we will be discussing that here. So what is AMD Platform Secure Boot? It's basically AMD's answer to Intel Boot Guard. Basically, the ASP is fused to only accept keys, only accept BIOS images coming from your board vendor, and this usually cannot be bypassed, aside from some exploits. Fuses are on the CPU package itself. This is different than with Intel, where the keys are fused to the platform controller hub, the chipset that is soldered to the board. So on AMD, you can basically bypass PSB by replacing the CPU with an unfused one. But there are also means that if you want to restart your CPU, for example, when you upgrade your CPU, you may find that you can't do that. For example, in Lenovo had some news about them, about their ThinkCenter series being fusing CPUs automatically, and people could not sell their CPUs. So that's, I think, part of the reason why we don't see that as much in desktop platforms like Enthusiast or DIY boards, but I do have one report of an Alienware desktop being fused in the AM4 platform. So how do you check if you have it? So on Intel, you would typically use Intel Boot Guard status from Felix Singer. And on AMD, for the longest time, there really wasn't a tool like that. So one day I just wrote a tool. It's a tiny bash script. It's literally 32 lines of code. It's based on coreboot's implementation of platform secure boot. So there isn't really public documentation for PSB, but you can deduce from coreboot's code how to check if it's enabled, and in fact how to enable it. It's basically a bit in a register in the system management network, which is a low-level configuration interface on AMD. And I also compile a list of reports from users. I have reports from a couple of ThinkPads, from a Steam Deck, and a couple of desktop boards. I have a short demo, which is basically you just clone the repository, and yeah, basically that's it. PSB is not enabled on my platform. As expected, this is my desktop computer. It's a B550 board, and it doesn't have platform secure boot. And as for future plans, I want to make checking more reliable, because one user has reported that FWPD and my tool reports different results, which is unexpected, but maybe I can do something about that with reading more. There's more registers for testing platform secure boot that are also documented in coreboot source code, so I wanted to implement that. I wanted to make it easier to submit some results, like adding a form or something. Remove dependency on external tools. So right now I have a dependency on IO tools for checking, for actually reading the register. I wanted to make it as streamlined as possible for users to make reports, so I don't want any external dependencies. So I would like to work on that. And ideally, we would also be checking BIOS binaries offline. So we have a dump of a BIOS image, or maybe an image from a BIOS update from a vendor. We would like to check if it has platform secure boot keys in the first place. It's a bit tricky to check if the automatic fusing is actually enabled, but if there are no BIOS signing keys, then we can be reasonably sure that PSB is not enabled, unless maybe some PSP directory definitions change and we miss it. Yeah, so that's basically it. That's my short presentation about my project. And yeah, if you have any questions.